Here is the English translation of the text this past decade starting from around 2015, with the rollout of Made in China and the Belt and Road Initiative, is now entering a 10-year harvest period for major engineering projects we discussed a lot earlier, such as AI in the United States. The success of American AI certainly isn't Trump's personal doing. We can't credit the rapid development of American AI to him alone, as it was driven by capitalists and the hard work of the previous two administrations, including Biden's CHIPS Act and the US stock market. In a sense, these factors nurtured the growth of American AI, so it can't be chalked up purely to Trump as an individual. However, when it comes to Chinese AI, while we can't attribute everything solely to Xi Jinping, it is undeniably tied to the long-term planning he laid out years ago. Starting in 2017, the central government designated AI as a primary area for development and capital allocation. Without those central decisions in 2017 and 2018, Chinese AI likely wouldn't have reached where it is today. In a way, this highlights the contrast between the two nations. The United States experiences frequent power transitions, whereas China operates within a relatively stable political environment. Next, let's look at their styles. As we mentioned, Trump acts like an extremely hard-working CEO who executes whatever pops into his mind each day, constantly busy like a cat on a hot tin roof. Xi Jinping, on the other hand, can be seen as a long-term strategist, a CEO playing the long game. Why? Take his visit to North Korea this year. Many people still can't make sense of that move. To be honest, I haven't seen a single commentator, including myself, despite all my analysis, reflection, and research, who fully grasps it. Why make Pyongyang his first foreign stop of the year? What impact does it have on the global landscape or China itself? Why didn't he visit a major economic partner first? Then there are the rumors about September suggesting he might head to the US to meet Donald Trump, with reports indicating that before attending the UN meeting on the 24th of September, he might stop in Canada for a 2 to 3 day meeting with Carney. Xi takes many actions whose purpose isn't immediately obvious, but a year or two later, you realize it was the right move or driven by a clear, focused goal. This marks a stark contrast to Trump, whose intentions are instantly clear. To some extent, many view this as a major shift for China from market-oriented policies toward national security, though the full picture remains to be seen. I bring this example up simply to highlight their distinct leadership and operational styles. Now, let's look at 4 key metrics for China in the first half of this year. They mirror us metrics in some ways, though key differences exist. China's GDP grew by 4.7% compared to 1.5% in the US. Given the massive scale of both economies, 4.7% and 1.5% represent solid growth, making China's first half performance a passing grade. Second, industrial manufacturing grew by 5.5%, a remarkable figure considering China's already massive manufacturing base. Where did this 5.5% growth come from? It came from new manufacturing sectors, such as automobile exports and new energy battery exports in the first half of the year. Another key metric is software revenue from AI models, which saw substantial gains in many developed nations. Overall, the first half report card for industry and GDP growth passes with solid marks. So why include the other 2 metrics? Here is the underlying logic. First, total retail sales of consumer goods increased by only 1.3%. While it looks like growth on paper, it is actually a weak metric. Second, real estate investment dropped by 18%, which points to a serious issue. Let's break this down further. In the first half of the year, a major initiative was the 15th Five-Year Plan, outlining 109 major projects, 28 of which focus on new quality productive forces, including integrated circuits, semiconductor chips, high-end industrial machinery, advanced materials, quantum technology, and biomanufacturing. These areas have been explicitly categorized under new quality productive forces. This policy setup differs noticeably from the approach taken during Made in China 2025. What was Made in China 2025? It served as a directional blueprint, signaling target industries like electric vehicles and drones for local governments to compete and advance in. In contrast, today's new quality productive forces are primarily spearheaded by central ministries and state-owned enterprises. The approach is far more focused, moving away from broad local competition toward direct management by central agencies and project teams. This clearly signals where China's industrial direction, future capital, engineering resources, and top talent will flow into integrated circuits, industrial machinery, advanced materials, quantum tech, and biomanufacturing. For entrepreneurs, recent graduates, or job seekers looking at long-term prospects, these state-backed sectors represent key opportunities over the next decade. In short, Made in China 2025 has run its course, and 2026 marks the transition into the second phase of new quality productive forces. Looking at another data point from the first half of the year, manufacturing as a whole grew by 5.5%. Break that down. And high-tech manufacturing value added surged by 13.3% year-over-year compared to 2025. Automated manufacturing grew by 12.3%. And within overall industrial profits, the electronics sector saw profits jump by 96.9%, nearly doubling. What does a 100% profit increase mean? First, high-end manufacturing like chips is expanding rapidly. Second, digital product manufacturing, meaning automated, smart factories, is accelerating. This is why the rise of AI will leave many traditional workers displaced. If digital product manufacturing keeps growing at 15% annually, robot automation could replace 50 to 70% of factory roles within a decade. Finally, doubling profits in the electronics sector shows that high-tech fields like industrial machinery and semiconductors have entered a high-margin phase, proving that industrial upgrading is yielding clear, measurable results. Beyond general manufacturing, critical bottleneck sectors subject to foreign sanctions have scaled up significantly. Take integrated circuits. Chips total production in the first half surged by 23.1% compared to the previous full year, reaching nearly 300 billion units for both domestic and export markets. Reaching 300 billion units with 23% growth in the first half of 2026 proves that scale has been achieved. Once economies of scale are established, industry experience shows that the period from 2026 to 2028 will trigger a technological leapfrog. As technology runs on this scaled infrastructure, higher tech products will emerge out of fierce market competition. Consider China's smartphone industry a decade ago, when production crossed 30 to 40 million units. Industry experts foresaw a tech leap, followed by rapid, aggressive market growth. A similar technological leapfrog is now forming in these sanction-heavy sectors. Additionally, R&D spending in high-tech industries grew by over 7% year-over-year in the first half, showing sustained investment. This highlights a key divide. While popular discourse on domestic platforms like Bilibili constantly demands better wealth, redistribution, state data, and resource allocation show that industrial upgrading remains the top national priority, while redistribution takes a back seat. This brings us to the core tension. While the government prioritizes rapid industrial breakthroughs and securing high-tech dominance, domestic distribution faces real challenges. The data explains why. In 2026, private investment fell by another 8.5% compared to 2025. Alongside a 5.7% decline in total fixed asset investment. Fixed assets, real estate, factories, apartments fell 5.7%, and private venture capital dropped 8.5% across the board. Meanwhile, state-backed strategic projects continue pushing forward. This reflects high policy compliance within the state apparatus, contrasted by low confidence among private investors who doubt short-term returns. Where Trump generates uncertainty, Xi fosters stability. Even amidst this state advances, private sector retreats trend. China's total exports grew by 13.4% last year. Crucially, high-tech exports jumped by 39%. As I've noted before, strong high-tech exports don't automatically mean private businesses or everyday citizens are thriving, as these advanced sectors are mostly held by major corporate giants or state-owned enterprises. This trend isn't unique to China. The US experiences a similar phenomenon. Where China sees state advances, private sector retreats. The US sees capital advances, individual retreats. Both rely on the principle of concentrating resources to achieve major goals. As major state or corporate entities pool resources for key initiatives, unaligned individuals and smaller players are left on the sidelines. Meanwhile, Trade Under the Belt and Road initiative surged by 51%, demonstrating growing resilience and diversification in import and export channels. By consolidating resources, export growth continues, high-tech exports expand, and trade with Belt and Road partners accelerates rapidly. Long-term efforts to build complete supply chains, market diversity, and self-reliance have forged a defensive barrier against external uncertainties, making it exceedingly difficult for the US to dismantle Chinese manufacturing. Now consider the phrase, state industry surges ahead, but household sentiment falls behind. While total retail sales grew by 1.3% on paper, a closer look at the underlying numbers reveals the reality. Per capita disposable income grew by 4.2% in real terms, while per capita consumption expenditure grew by only 2.7%. Income grew by 4.2%, but spending grew by only 2.7%, yielding a meager 1.3% overall retail growth. This indicates that many people simply aren't spending, and the 2.7% consumption growth was largely driven by high-income spenders. During a recent trip to Shanghai, people complained about low consumer willingness, yet Michelin-starred restaurants were fully booked weeks in advance. High earners keep spending, while ordinary citizens hold back. The primary reason ordinary people aren't spending isn't the pandemic, it is real estate. In 2026, real estate investment fell another 18%, showing the sector has yet to reach bottom. New commercial housing sales area dropped 11.6%, and sales value dropped 13.6%. Every real estate metric remains weak. Why are people holding back on spending? Because the middle class, the demographic that used to spend freely, has its wealth trapped in real estate. Even as tech and industry advance into 2026, many households are still trapped paying off real estate debt and recovering from property losses. Until real estate bottoms out, moving from double-digit declines to -2% or -3% around 2027 or 2028. Consumer spending will struggle to recover. Replacing real estate as an economic engine is nearly impossible. Take stock trading as an example. It is extremely difficult for an average person to make 2 million RMB in the stock market, even in a bull market. But with property, a 5 million RMB home losing half its value means a hard loss of 2.5 million RMB. While monthly mortgage payments remain due, stock market gains cannot easily cover real estate losses. Whether the real estate market undergoes a soft or hard landing, spending will remain constrained until it bottoms out, as the biggest spenders remain tied down by property debt, and for the unluckiest stock market losses as well. Has the leadership recognized this issue? Clearly, yes. Throughout 2026 economic planning meetings, Xi Jinping repeatedly emphasized expanding domestic demand, boosting consumption, increasing household incomes, reassuring private entrepreneurs, updating urban infrastructure, and stabilizing real estate through targeted lending. AI queries show this was raised over 15 times in various official meetings this year, proving the leadership understands that domestic demand is vital. Without strong domestic demand, public calls for aggressive wealth redistribution grow louder. Yet, reckless redistribution during a private investment slump would further destroy business confidence. Stripping wealth from prominent entrepreneurs like Fuyao Glass's Cao Diwang or Meituan's Wang Xing would completely freeze private investment. The leadership realizes the need to stimulate demand, but its primary focus remains anchored on production, industrial upgrading, and security, using consumer policy merely as a balancing tool. To grade XE's overall performance in the first half of 2026, the key difference between Xi and Trump is that Trump tries to cater to every faction: the MAGA base, America First advocates, energy sector capital, AI titans, and foreign policy hawks, resulting in internal friction. Xi, by contrast, focuses strictly on driving the nation toward long-term industrial upgrading. However, not everyone can be carried along in this transition. This explains the growing frustration and demands for redistribution among those left behind by AI, green tech, and new energy sectors, leading to a perceived loss of social mobility. Online, some express anger, pointing to Deng Xiaoping's principle of letting some get rich first to help others later, and calling for confiscating the wealth of the rich. Others debate targeting entrepreneurs individually to prevent capital flight. These discussions show that China's current industrial transformation is the result of a decade of deliberate planning coming to fruition in 2026, contrasting sharply with Trump's erratic, fast-moving style. First, Xi maintains absolute control over the state apparatus, ensuring a unified national direction without internal dissent. Second, despite distribution imbalances, missed economic waves for some, and long-term real estate drag on the middle class, the overall net gain remains positive. This dynamic fuels online sentiment, where people view the state positively, while blaming capitalists, arguing the state should redistribute corporate wealth directly to the public. This reveals the persistence of underlying social tensions. Just as political infighting dominates headlines in the US or Taiwan, class sentiment remains prominent on Chinese social platforms like Bilibili. From a governance standpoint, regulatory fines on tech giants like Meituan or Strip even, if funds don't directly reach individual pockets, serve to appease public sentiment. That wraps up the analysis of domestic perspectives in China. Let's move past this topic. We will conclude our discussion on the top three powers tonight and cover India and Japan tomorrow night, finishing with Russia next. Russia presents a fundamentally different picture from the previous two nations, as it operates under wartime conditions.